Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Have you ever paused to consider how ancient institutions adapt? To a world that seems to reinvent itself every single day.
It's a huge question, isn't it?
Totally. How do these deeply rooted traditions navigate, the digital age, shifting social landscapes, and just the incredible diversity of modern spiritual paths?
Yeah.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a fascinating collection of sources. They're all about the Catholic Church and its encounter with the 21st century. You brought us some really compelling material.
I think it paints quite a picture.
And our mission really is to uncover the key challenges and maybe some surprising opportunities for one of the world's oldest continuous organizations as it tries, to stay relevant and connect with people in this largely secular digital world.
It's definitely a rich landscape of information. It touches on everything from evangelization and modern spirituality to the complexities of secularism and the church's own internal evolution. And what becomes clear from these sources, I think, is this dynamic interplay, how the church is striving to maintain its core identity while at the same time responding to the pressing needs and, the profound questions of contemporary society.
Okay, so let's dive right into that first big area, the digital frontier. Our sources highlight that the church is really grappling with how to effectively reach people in an increasingly online world. But this isn't like an entirely new challenge for them, is it?
No, not at all. The call to use modern social communications for evangelization, it actually has quite a history.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our sources take us back to 1955, Archbishop Fulton Sheen's Life is Worth Living show.
Ah, I've heard of that.
Right, he leveraged the ABC television network, reaching an estimated 30 million people weekly.
30 million, back then?
Back then, winning Emmys, engaging Catholics and non-Catholics alike. It's a powerful demonstration, really, of what's possible when modern media is effectively harnessed for the gospel message.
And what's truly striking when we look at the data you brought is just the sheer scale of digital engagement today.
Oh, absolutely.
Our sources point out Americans spend around 4.5 hours a day watching TV, about 5 hours on mobile devices, 2.5 hours listening to music or radio, and over 3 hours online.
It's staggering.
Yeah. And some studies even suggest a quarter of us are online pretty much constantly, exposed to thousands, maybe 10,000 ads daily.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If society as a whole dedicates so much time and energy to digital media, what would the church be like if it approached evangelization on this digital continent, as some call it, with similar intensity?
Right.
The sources certainly suggest the church, much like Fulton Sheen did in his time, sees immense opportunity in these digital spaces. But, the reality is that it seems to have fallen significantly behind.
Fallen behind how?
Well, it might not just be a matter of resources, although that's part of it.
Okay.
Maybe it's also a kind of institutional inertia, prioritizing traditional forms over embracing the agile, constantly evolving nature of digital platforms. It makes true relevance a constantly moving target.
So what does this look like in terms of the church's actual digital presence today, like practically speaking?
Well, the sources note that out of hundreds of TV channels, very few are Catholic. And often their production quality doesn't quite meet modern broadcast standards.
Okay.
Similarly, most Catholic radio stations, they're on the cheaper, harder-to-tune AM platforms. And very few Catholic websites are described as genuinely world-class.
That's interesting.
It kind of echoes a prescient warning from Vatican II, specifically in Inter Mirifica 17, which was this landmark document focusing on modern communications.
What did it say?
It urged the church's members, priests, religious, and laity alike, not to let the message of salvation be thwarted by, technical difficulties or expenses.
So a call to invest.
Exactly. It's really a call to arms for time, talent, and treasure in digital evangelization. And it stems from the belief that the church has a duty to meet people where they are, which increasingly is online.
Okay, understanding how the church communicates leads us naturally to what it communicates. Especially in a world where so many people identify as spiritual but not religious, our sources offer a really fascinating personal account that illustrates this journey.
Exactly. There's this lecture from Archbishop Thomas Wenski, and it highlights this growing trend. About 1 in 5 Americans identifies this way.
1 in 5. Wow.
And this often manifests as individuals constructing their own sort of made-to-order creeds, maybe believing in Jesus, but not the structured church, associating faith more with private experience than, say, public institutions or established creeds.
That brings to mind that compelling personal journey shared in our sources, this person referred to as the rock and roll cat.
Yes, that one.
Became a non-believer, then delves deep into the New Age movement after a career-ending injury. Explored everything from Tai Chi and Qi Kung to meditations, EST, psychic fairs, seances. It really paints a vivid picture of that kind of spiritual search, doesn't it?
It truly does. That account describes the powerful allure of the New Age, the excitement of perceiving a spiritual realm, believing in concepts like life force energy, chi or prana and reincarnation.
Right.
He was told, what is true for me might not be true for you, which led him to believe that, every path up a spiritual mountain led to the summit, and that ultimately no moral law was binding.
But his experience didn't stay entirely positive, did it? What did the sources say about a darker turn?
Yeah, he describes some ominous warnings, encounters with what he calls disturbed entities, and this profound sense of spiritual attack.
That sounds intense.
It culminated in a desperate cry for Jesus, which he recounts brought immediate relief and actually banished these entities.
Yeah.
And this experience is then contrasted sharply in the source material with what's described as authentic Catholic spirituality. The source argues that New Age is often a kind of rehash of old Gnostic heresies.
Gnosticism, like ancient spiritual movements.
Exactly. Often positing secret knowledge, a dualistic view of the world. And the source claims it can be poisonous to the life of faith. It emphasizes that true Christian spirituality isn't narcissistic navel-gazing or just a self-seeking journey.
So, rather than picking and choosing, how do these sources present the core of authentic Catholic spirituality? What does that look like?
They portray it as fundamentally rooted in a relationship with the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's about participation in Christ's passion, death, and resurrection through baptism, living a life of discipleship, and this radical self-emptying, or kenosis.
Kenosis.
Yeah, it means humbling oneself, essentially, in imitation of Christ. The spirituality is rooted in what it calls absolute truth, embodied in Jesus and the Bible, and finds its highest manifestation in the Holy Eucharist. And it also involves practices like daily prayer, active participation in parish life, veneration of Mary and the saints, and crucially, tangible service to those in need.
Right, the action component.
Precisely. And the prosperity gospel, preached by some TV evangelists, it's explicitly called a heresy in these sources for distorting this true message and, very significantly, for removing the cross from Jesus' message.
Understanding how people find meaning in new spiritual paths then really begs the question, how does an ancient institution like the Church operate in a world increasingly defined by secular values? Our sources tell us secularism presents a kind of unique paradox for the Catholic Church, especially in the U.S.
Indeed. Secularism itself is a broad concept, isn't it? Often understood in 3 ways. As a social process, limiting religious influence. As a principle of state organization, like the separation of church and state.
Right, the famous wall.
And also as an ideology, sometimes one that's actively hostile to religion. The sources highlight that the separation of church and state is foundational to the U.S. Constitution. It crucially protects religious freedom.
But
yeah.
There's a but coming, I feel.
Well, the sources argue it also creates a sort of existential threat when societal morality itself becomes secularized, potentially pushing faith more and more into the private sphere.
And what are some real-world examples of how this tension plays out?
Well, the case of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett is cited, a devout Catholic, mother of a large family. During her confirmation, her faith drew what the sources describe as malicious attacks.
I remember that.
Right, with one senator explicitly stating, "The dogma lives loudly within you, and that is of concern."
Wow, that's pretty direct.
It really underscores the tension. The very secularism that protects religious freedom can also, paradoxically, foster anti-religious or specifically anti-Catholic bias in public discourse. And the demographic shift among millennials really illustrates this challenge too. 35% identifying as nuns, religiously unaffiliated, and nearly half, 49% of those raised religious, turning away.
And do the sources suggest the media plays a role in this dynamic?
Absolutely. The sources claim that mainstream media tends to largely ignore religion, or maybe mention the church only when there are scandals, or when religious leaders comment on, quote, sex or politics.
The hot-button issues.
Exactly. This bias, it's argued, can inadvertently reinforce a secular agenda and damage the church's image, especially among those already hesitant about faith.
So given this rising tide of secularism, what do the sources reveal about the church's response, particularly from recent popes?
It's interesting. The sources show that Popes John Paul II, Benedict VI, and Francis all emphasize the importance of the church actively engaging with the secular world, not retreating from it.
How so?
John Paul II, for instance, saw secularism, particularly in the form of communism back then, as destructive. He urged the church to pursue a religious path of development, support people against violations of liberties, and promote pastoral activity.
Okay, and Benedict?
Benedict XVI spoke of the necessity to support the connection between the church and the secular world. He stressed active participation in fighting social injustice and poverty as a common aim, one shared by people of all worldviews, religious or not.
I see. And Pope Francis?
Pope Francis really links this, emphasizing evangelization as an embodiment of the church's mission right within a predominantly secular society.
So it sounds like there's this consistent message that faith isn't meant to be a restriction, but maybe more like a pathway for opportunity, for engagement with the world.
Precisely. The goal, as presented in the sources, is to adapt to changing realities, to demonstrate relevance by uniting people, helping those in need, opposing social and economic injustice.
Like putting faith into action.
Exactly. The Second Vatican Council itself, despite sometimes being seen as traditional in certain areas, was really a significant attempt to redefine what it means to be Catholic in the contemporary world and regain some intellectual and social influence.
Okay, so having explored these external pressures, digital age, secularism, spirituality trends, let's turn our gaze inward for a bit. How is the church itself evolving, particularly in its own social teachings and the roles of its diverse members?
Yeah, that brings us to a crucial question. How does the church demonstrate its relevance from within, especially in a society grappling with issues of justice and inclusion?
Right.
Our sources point to the 7 themes of Catholic social teaching as a core framework guiding this.
Can you list those quickly?
Sure. They include the life and dignity of the human person, the call to family, community, and participation, rights and responsibilities, the option for the poor and vulnerable, the dignity of work and the rights of workers, solidarity, and care for God's creation.
Quite a list.
It is. And these themes provide the compass, really, for the church's engagement with societal problems.
Okay, let's look at how these principles get applied, starting with, say, racial equality. The sources suggest the church has a bit of a complex history here.
Indeed. While the sources acknowledge a historical heritage with what are described as racist details, they also emphasize that the church has a long history of promoting racial equality. For example, the inclusion of African American faithful was apparently a priority for clergy way back in the 19th century, citing St. Augustine, promoting the equality of all Christians before God.
And more recently,
the sources note that lower ranks of Catholic leadership, theological students, local priests, Sisters of Mercy actively participated in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Interesting.
Which aligns quite directly with Catholic social teaching on justice and freedom. It illustrates that the church can and does align with, well, what might be seen as liberal social positions on many fronts.
What about the role of women within the church? That's always a significant topic. The sources cover a vast history and some ongoing discussions, right?
Absolutely. Women have played an incredibly significant and diverse role throughout history. They've been influential figures, theologians, abbesses, monarchs, mystics, martyrs, scientists, educationalists.
Like who? Any examples?
Oh, sure. Think of Hildegard of Bingen, Teresa of Avila, Catherine of Siena, Therese de Lisieux. They're all recognized as doctors of the church. And of course, Mother Teresa in more recent times.
Right.
And historically, the church also condemned practices like incest and polygamy, and notably held men's marital infidelity as equally sinful to women's, which wasn't always the norm in society.
But despite this deep historical influence, discussions, even controversies, they still continue, don't they? Particularly around ordination and leadership roles.
Yes, that's definitely true. The sources state that while women are excluded from the Catholic hierarchy of bishops, priests, and deacons, they actually constitute the vast majority of members in consecrated life. Over 721,000 back in 2010.
Wow, that's a huge number.
It is, and in the U.S., something like 85% of all non-ordained church roles are performed by women. That trend's been growing, apparently due to shifting cultural attitudes, outreach ministries, and also women's willingness sometimes to accept lower salaries.
So what's the church's official like the doctrinal stance on women's ordination? Is it set in stone?
Well, the doctrine is stated very clearly. Only a baptized man, vir, validly receives sacred ordination. That Latin word vir is key. It specifically means male human being.
Okay.
And this is considered a matter of divine law, unchanging for priestly and episcopal ordination. It's based on faithfulness to tradition and what's understood as Christ's will, since he chose only men as apostles.
But the debate continues.
Oh, the debate certainly continues internally. Internal biblical commissions have sometimes found that scriptural grounds alone aren't necessarily sufficient to definitively exclude women.
Any changes happening?
Yes, there have been some notable 21st century changes. For instance, women are now permitted to have their feet washed on Holy Thursday. They've been appointed to Vatican posts previously held only by men, like the first female rector of a pontifical university, the first woman member of a Vatican congregation, first female secretary to a dicastery.
So some movement in roles.
And significantly, the first woman with voting rights in the Synod of Bishops. Plus, women can now be permanently admitted to the instituted ministries of lector and acolyte, which are formal lay roles.
Interesting developments.
Yeah.
And on reproductive issues, does the stance remain as firm as it has been historically?
Yes, our sources confirm the Church's very strong opposition to both contraception and abortion.
How are they described?
They're considered intrinsically evil and moral evils, respectively. These roots trace back to the very first centuries of Christianity.
Right.
The 1968 encyclical Humani Vitae, which rejected artificial contraception, and Pope John Paul II's 1995 Evangelium Vitae, condemning the culture of death, are both cited as key documents articulating this firm stance.
Okay, finally, let's try and connect all of this back to the younger generation. Their engagement with the church, especially given what we heard earlier about the nuns, the religiously unaffiliated.
Right. There's a report mentioned, the Archdiocese of Newark's Synod on Synodality report. It included insights from over 1,200 students.
And what did it find?
It indicated that young Catholics are yearning for a church they can actively engage in. That's the quote. But
There's a but.
they often feel disconnected, not accepted, or unheard, particularly on social issues and mental health.
And does this show up in participation?
It seems so. The report notes a worrying trend where many who go through confirmation programs don't actually remain active afterwards.
So what's being done to address this sense of disconnect, to try and better engage young people?
Well, the Archdiocese of Newark's Office for Youth and Young Adult Ministry, OYUM, is mentioned as implementing several initiatives.
Like what?
Things like coordinating pilgrimages to World Youth Day, hosting these called rally days for faith formation, and restarting something called the Archdiocese Youth Ministry Advisory Council, AMAC, specifically to give teens a real voice.
Giving them a seat at the table, essentially.
Exactly. And they're also promoting local young adult groups. One called F.U.E.L, Faithfully United in Eucharistic Life, is highlighted because it actually continued to grow even during the pandemic by adapting to virtual meetings.
That's impressive.
It shows adaptability. The sources reveal this clear desire to create welcoming environments for youth in every parish and to really improve communication about the resources that are available, tackling that sense of feeling unheard head on.
So after diving through all this material, what really stands out to you from this deep dive into the Catholic Church in the 21st century? We've touched on, the ambitious call to digital evangelization, the nuanced response to the spiritual but not religious trend, that complex paradox of secularism in America, and the evolving roles of people within its, let's face it, enduring structure.
Yeah.
It's clear, I think, that this is an institution facing immense challenges, but it's also demonstrating a persistent willingness, maybe sometimes slow, but a willingness to adapt and connect.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? In a world that's constantly redefining itself, what might be the unique contribution of an institution that genuinely strives to live by both ancient truths and a dynamic engagement with present realities? Maybe think about how deeply rooted traditions and modern progress can perhaps inform and strengthen each other, maybe in surprising and powerful ways that we might not yet fully grasp.
Thank you for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you found this content helpful or entertaining, please consider hitting the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. We release new content regularly, so you won't want to miss out.